Welcome to the fifth episode of our podcast, Existential Idiots. I'm here with Thomas and myself, Lilith. In today's episode, we'll be talking about men's mental health for Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Please keep in mind we are not health professionals and we are merely two existential idiots raising awareness on mental health and speaking on behalf of our own experiences.
Hi.
Hi!
Hey.
So to start out, we have, like we did with our first episode on mental health, we got some questions and topics we were going to talk about, but mostly we're just going to be going based on our own experiences. I want to preference that obviously we are talking about men's mental health awareness. I myself am not a man, but I will be speaking on behalf of people around me, what I've noticed, and so forth. But yeah, Thomas, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, I didn't actually know that it was men's mental health awareness, but I kept seeing a bunch of posts on Instagram about it, and so I didn't even know that it. Yeah, yeah, I didn't even know that we even had our own month. So it was like news to me. Like I know we just had what May was just mental health awareness in general, but so I mean
Yeah.
it's kind of nice to know that there are, there is a month dedicated just to men's mental health because I feel like it is the one that goes unnoticed. Because
True.
there are a lot of societal norms that are expected of us men sometimes, and I definitely like I haven't necessarily felt the pressure of it really because I've always just kind of felt like I was in my own world, and like I always thought, when people are like, no, that's not what men do, like I just thought that was like silly, and I would kind of giggle about it because I'm just like, it's like it doesn't have to be that way, like there's no set
Yeah.
way to act or be, like just be yourself, like don't you know be stuck
Yeah.
behind something that someone else told you to be. Like that's silly to me. Like I feel like I wouldn't be myself. I feel like I'd be someone else. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. And like I was a little new to it's kind of sad. Last year, not a lot of people knew about Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, or just in general that was a thing that people were talking about or brought to awareness. But I I actually don't even necessarily. I think it is dedicated a whole full month to it, which is great because a lot of the times there there are so many other different things going on in the world, and I'm glad this is becoming more of a it's going bigger basically because I remember a few years ago when it first became a thing or it was getting a little bit more popular in social media. A lot of people didn't even know about it, and I actually had one of my guy friends who is studying counseling tell me about it. He's like, yeah, like there's obviously Pride Month, and that's great too, but there's also men's mental health. And I was like, oh wow, like I actually didn't know about that. It's actually really great because there's also uh, like Women's International Month or something, like something along those lines. But yeah, like I'm glad that we are going to be talking about it. I know Thomas and I have been wanting to talk about this, and then I also want to hear from anyone else's experiences as well as for you, Thomas. So it's gonna be interesting. So yeah.
yeah, I will say, I didn't really. I think I talked about this before, but I didn't really like know about a lot about like mental health. Like I thought, like when I was younger, especially, like I thought like mental illness was like real. I mean, it is serious. Don't get me wrong, but like I thought it would like seriously hinder. Like I thought mental illness was just for like people who like could not function. And sometimes the mental illnesses do get that bad, but I didn't know,
Yeah.
like I don't know, I kind of like downplayed it. Like when I was sad, like I didn't think, that it could be depression. It's like, oh no, like
Mm.
it would be way worse. Like I wouldn't be able to function. And I've come to realize that sometimes it does get that bad. I do have episodes where I just kind of sit and, I actually do this funny thing that I saw a video about not too long ago where it was like
Oh.
men sit in their car after work and just kind of sit there
Oh
for like a
yeah,
really long
yeah.
time. I
Mm.
When I realized I was doing that, I laughed so hard because I was just like, "Damn, that is something that we do. We kind of just sit here and
Mm.
like, we're by ourselves and we have to like kind of prepare ourselves to walk into something. And so it's kind of nice, but that's just one of those things that." you know, I don't
Yeah, and
necessarily think that's a, sorry, I cut you off.
oh no, you're good. I was gonna say I wish like a lot of people I knew who, especially guys, spoke about more of their own experiences when they feel sad. I feel like a lot of the times, it's hard for men to feel very vulnerable with their feelings, and like I have a friend of mine who dissociates a lot with their thoughts when they come home from something, like hanging out with a friend, and like they'll do the same thing where they'll sit in the car and just process everything, because I think that's like their only form of space that they can process a lot of things, or they'll and express it. I mean, I don't want to say for all men, but I know for like some people in general, like they'll express it. They just bottle it up, if anything. But yeah, for like the most part, he I remember there was one night where he like messaged me that he was just having all these like existential thoughts, ironically. And I was like, oh man, this is something that's not of his nature, really. Like a side of him that I don't really get to see, which I really wish a lot of men would just do that in general. But I know that's easy said than done. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like been new for me, and I still even struggle now. You know, there
Mm-hmm.
are people that still do not know that I've been diagnosed before, you know, and that it's,
Yeah.
I remember telling a couple people and they were like really surprised. They were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, see, it's like it's not so obvious sometimes when someone's, you know, really sad, and unfortunately this is kind of like a really sad topic, but like people who are suicidal often sometimes they'll have a really big change, like where they'll be like happy, and I have noticed that before. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, no one in my life has committed suicide, but I have noticed that that change, and it, you know, it definitely like put me on high alert because it's, you know, you want to think that they're getting better, but it's, you have to be wary, you know, because you never know, and it's so.
Yeah, and like I've um I've had very close friends of mine who are men did commit suicide, and that alone is still something that I even process today, because I'm going through the process of, oh man, I wish I could have done something, or they've reached out, but of course I'm not gonna go too much into detail with that. But I know there are a lot of times where men feel like they are alone with their feelings, and it's also that societal expectation that they have that it's that they shouldn't be able to reach out for help, when it really is like the opposite when they can. And I'm glad that we are in a society where it feels a little bit okay, a little, but it is definitely more okay to reach out for help for anybody, really. So, um, I know for my own personal experiences with my brothers, like it was really hard for them to express their feelings in a lot of ways. Thankfully, my dad was very accepting of that, but even then, like they have their own form of stigmas against needing that help. So that makes it even more difficult for them to even process their own feelings or thoughts. So they'll just end up ruminating their feelings alone, or letting them eat it alive, you know? So, yeah. I mean, I know that applies to everybody, but I always feel bad when, especially it's for guys and stuff, because they have so much expectations put on them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will say too, I've had personal experiences with this, and I have realized that I needed to reach out for help. And a couple of times I've reached out, and it's not been well received. It's, and it kind of gets you in a really bad mindset. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's one thing to even think about reaching out, but to actually do it and then be shot down and be
Yeah.
told that you're being, you know, delusional or crazy, is, I mean, that just completely ruined, like, it's like I
Yeah.
decided to be vulnerable, and now I'm not being accepted even when I'm
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, so I'm gonna, you know, just
Yeah.
hide away in a corner now because I already,
Yeah.
it happen if it happens a couple times, like, you know, obviously if something
Yeah.
bad keeps happening you don't want to do it, because, you know, so thankfully I've had some people in my life, including you, that have been
Mm-hmm.
very, very accepting of everything that I've had to say. So I would
Yeah.
say it's really important for your mental health to surround yourself with people that really take the time to care about you, and um,
Yeah.
just make time. make time, you know, and sometimes it like episodes will happen at a really bad time. Like
Hmm.
they could be really busy, or it's just like they're going through their own thing and you have no idea. And so sometimes
Yeah.
it's really a test um of the friendship and stuff like that sometimes if it's at a bad time. But I think that if it's really strong, you can work it out no matter what. So I thankfully I've had that with almost all my friends and stuff like that. But
Yeah, that's the worst feeling is when they do try to reach out for, or anyone really, but specifically I'm talking about with guys and stuff, that they reach out to somebody and then they get told, hey, you can't feel that way, or that's not what a real man is, and that, oh man, I can go on about uh, the idea of like what a real man is, but vulnerability, at least for me, is always the argument because it's like that is allowing them to really feel how they feel. But I know it's really hard to express that nowadays because it's like these expectations that were put on them since they were young that carries on and it's engraved in their head otherwise, and then any time that they feel any sort of way, that's what they feel like. It's, oh, I don't feel like I'm strong enough or manly enough and whatnot. And it's like the worst thing because it in a way it just doesn't allow them to get the help that they need or even reach out. It just process everything by um I don't know, it could be like negative coping mechanisms and whatnot. But it's actually funny. I've been not really funny, but I it's a population I actually do want to work with a little bit more. I don't know if I've mentioned this in my previous in the previous episodes, but I actually want to work with like teen adolescent, and the reasons why because a lot of the times that's usually around the age where a lot of beliefs become into play with how they grow up and stuff. It's how they identify themselves. Like it's definitely a transition period, and that was like one of the things that I even for me when I was younger, that's like what are the expectations right now in society because it's where you want to fit with the society. I know with that men especially with kids, young boys, they grow up with a family member that will tell them something, or like how social media displays them, how everybody wants them to be, and that's definitely where I want to work on and tell them otherwise. Like, nope, be yourself. It's really okay. You can be however you want to be. Don't let society try to change or dim your light on that. So, yep, 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 yep.
yeah, I definitely think I've noticed like I was saying earlier, like I've kind of like when someone says manly, I think of it as in my own terms. Like I kind of leave it at like there is a term like, oh, big, strong, burly man, like does everything by
Mm-hmm.
himself and like is really strong, but like it doesn't have to be that way. You can have
Right.
your own version of, and I even see like on Instagram and stuff like that, and social media actually plays a really big part. I just thought of that while I was talking, you know, about
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, but it plays a really big part because I see stuff all the time
Mm-hmm.
about, you know, it's okay to not be okay and stuff like that. So as much as social
Yeah.
media can be a bad thing too, it can be a really good thing for helping people, you know, not necessarily cope, but you know, raise awareness of things that do not get talked about, you know, like because someone might live in a very traditional family and they
Mm-hmm.
might not hear those things other than, and then they see it on social media, you know, and they are like, wow, you know, they're like, this has to be wrong, right? Because I mean they don't know anything
Yeah.
else. So um thankfully I kind of had like growing up, like my family was just very like understanding and like they kind of just went with the flow, and I
Mm-hmm.
definitely do that. So um you know, it not everybody's going to be like that, you know. They might be super, like my parents were not super strict, like they
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to do well, and like that was about it. But
Yeah.
anyway, my point is that when I think of a man, I think of someone who can be themselves while also like, I don't know, my view on like providing is very different. I think that providing like a safe space is almost more important than like providing money. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
having a safe environment to like raise a child or like nurture a marriage is much more important than any monetary, you know, thing that I would bring in. to a household. And I
Yeah.
definitely, that was something I learned about my late grandfather. My mom talked about him and said he wasn't around a lot, but he would work his ass off all the time. And that was his, that's was him growing up. That's what he was taught. He was taught that he was the provider and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so it definitely affected my mom, him not being around, so that was just an interesting thing that I learned about him after he passed away, unfortunately. But
I'm sorry. Hmm. Yeah, with my family it was a little different. So I have an idea of how at least my brothers grew up because most of and also just having guy friends growing up, that's been one of the main things. So but I my dad grew up with my grandfather who served in the military, and back in the earlier days, I mean, the expectations were the norms were so much different because like crying wasn't allowed in a household because they would consider you as weak, or expressing your emotions on something doesn't qualify you as a man, and that was already what got stuck in my dad's brain. So he if you ever listen to this, I'm sorry, Dad. But like, um, it didn't allow him to really process his feelings a lot. So he grew up in it was a really strict household. And then growing up with my brothers, I don't know, it was a little bit different. I couldn't really speak on behalf of how my brothers felt, but I knew they also had. I think the actual societal norms really also impacted how they thought about a lot of things, like um, they never really got to experiment with a lot of things, just like, oh, like playing with boys' toy because it's for boys, and like even with my nephew, he recently started playing toys with. He really likes Frozen, so I even had to tell my brother like it's like he's cool with it, but like the idea of that's a girl's toy is it's like no, it's a toy. Anybody can play with it. Let him be. He can express how he feels, and like I'm glad my brother has also been a really great dad to him to show him that yeah, like you can cry, you can feel all these things because I feel like deep down he wasn't able to also express that himself, and so I think that's one thing for me. Um, if I ever have a son, that would be one of the biggest things I will always emphasize is that they can allow themselves to feel that way. Because, I mean, for starters, it's already hard enough for guys to cry. and they do it in private because I think they're also embarrassed to do it in front of others too. I don't know if you can speak on behalf of this, Thomas. Maybe it's different for you, or maybe it's the same, but I know like a lot of my guy friends, some are very open to it, some are not because it's like that idea of like if I cry, I'm gonna be displayed as weak, and that already breaks my heart because I definitely like that's one thing I even find for someone, my friends or like a partner is like allow yourself to be vulnerable, and that's really okay because at the end of the day you're just human, and that's okay to do express these things. It's not because of your gender. So
yeah, I definitely would have to say that it was a hard thing. I think it's much easier for me to do that now. I haven't really done it in a while. I think
mhm.
that I I think as I matured, I just handled things differently.
Right,
It's I
yeah.
used to definitely cry a lot more than like I think my teen years, but I
Mhm.
think everybody did that, honestly. I mean, maybe I'm just the
Okay, yeah.
outlier, but I
I mean,
definitely
for me, yes, for sure. It's definitely a time of it's puberty. It's a lot of emotions, a
yeah,
lot of
for sure.
things happening at
But
once.
yeah, I definitely there is like one line that always gets me, and that's actually I have a kind of like a sad but like I want to share this story. I was at work and I accidentally messed up something like really bad. Like it was I was so like angry at myself and like one of the coworkers like he was not happy because it affected him and he got really upset with me and I was like, he wasn't understanding that like it was just a simple mistake. And I really don't like people that don't take the time to just like assess a situation. They kind of just blow up. And so like
Mhm.
um it made me really upset. And then my boss like saw how upset I was and he was like hey man, you doing okay? And like that sentence breaks me like every time. And I did like I
Yeah.
shed a little bit of a tear, and I was just like I can't do this right now. Like it there was
Mhm.
just such an overflow of emotion. Like I did stand up for myself, but like that's not something that I wanted to necessarily do, because I felt like I'll stand up for myself, but only when it's necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like in that
Yeah.
situation, I just wanted to say, you know what, I messed up. I wanted to be mature about it. I was like, I messed up. I'll do everything I can to fix it. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I learned from it. And that's what you should do when you make a mistake, is you learn from it. But I feel like, especially in society, when it's people are so afraid of making a mistake that they forget the reason that they're even doing it. So it's like,
Yeah, that's true.
so yeah, that's a really like personal story I haven't really told a lot of people about, but that I just don't want to say that sentence sometimes will I actually have said that to people before, and it breaks them too. It's like, hey, you doing okay? So sometimes it's, if you don't know what to say, sometimes that's a good way to get really,
Yeah.
if they trust you, they'll be like, sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm fine, but they're
Mhm.
not. But
Yeah, the I'm fine sentence.
yeah.
Yeah, the whole the are you okay? It's all, I mean, too, for everybody. It's already hard enough when people don't really have anybody to really check up on them, or it's not really brought to awareness. It's because there's so many other distractions. Like, I know when I'm playing with friends, we're focusing on the video game, or if it's talking about something else, like a different topic, and then suddenly you're locked in and you say like, "Hey, are you okay?" And it just relinquishes so much emotions. It's insane. And like, I myself am the same way. If somebody asks me if are you okay, I'm gonna start bawling my eyes out. And I know that's usually that's another reason why I always just message people like, hey, how are you doing? Like, are you doing okay? This is a check-in, making sure you're doing okay, taking care of yourself, which a lot of people don't even implement self-care sometimes, that they just distract themselves with being busy and whatnot. And it's always a good for anybody, guys, girls, whoever you may be, to always just check in for your loved ones and for yourself even too, because that's always a priority too. So yeah.
I will say too, something that directly affected how people think of me in general was I was in the military.
Oh
That a
yeah.
lot of people, and I've had this said to me so many times, is that, man, I forgot you were in the military. And I'm like, sometimes I stop them and I'm like, why do you think that? And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of people just view that as like really serious, and like, uh, like, damn, like the military, like they're really freaking strict over there, and like you're probably like
Yeah.
super serious like all the time. And it's like, no, I mean, I did run into that a lot. I will say that, and it was really hard to be sensitive in that situation. And like, it's kind of funny because they would talk about it all the time, and the mental health and stuff like that, and we had meetings all the time about
Mhm.
it. But like,
Mhm.
everybody always kind of laughed it off, and it really bothered me when they did that. Like, oh, we got to go through this
Yeah.
class again. It's like, no, you should sit down and listen. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but like, if there's a high rate of suicide in the military, and I think if more
Yeah.
people paid attention to the training that they did give, it would help a lot. And I've even myself checked in on a couple of my, we call them battle buddies, but I've checked in on quite a few of them, and I've even had them message me out of the blue. And like, I even a couple months ago, I had one of them message me, and just he seemed like he was not in a good headspace, and I talked to him for a little bit, and I think he felt better. And like, even though we don't talk anymore, I still care about him a lot. He was a good guy.
Mhm.
And, he deserves to have people that are in his support system that aren't necessarily a part of his life. But
Mhm.
so I'm glad that I could do that. I definitely
Yeah.
had bad experiences. I think I got diagnosed while I was in, and I kind of, after that, I think I missed a couple of months. Um, of drill, and I definitely
Mm-hmm.
noticed the air was different around everybody with me because I think people had talked when they weren't supposed to, and like kind of learned what I was
Mm-hmm.
going through, and I think people were just more careful around me and stuff like that and what to say, and I didn't really appreciate that too
Yeah.
much, and it was
They don't
it
want to set you off, yeah.
yeah, it was kind of interesting. Looking back on it, I definitely felt out of place. Like when I joined, I
Mm-hmm.
felt I felt a part of a big thing, but after that, I think that they just have to say that they're accepting of it just because they're told to. And unfortunately, that's just the reality sometimes with people is that they're told to feel a specific way, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they just follow it because they also believe that in a way.
Yeah. Well, first off, I condone you for allowing the time and energy as well to check up on your friends as well, your buddies, and also provide a safe space for them because a lot of the times it's already hard to reach out to someone else who has been through the same experience but may not take it as seriously or how they feel about their mental health. So like that already alone is really great. That you do that. And like I know from um my brother was in the military. He that was like another issue that he was having was because he was going to school and then he was in the military and there was just a lot of it was a lot of pressure for him because it was the whole college scene where you had to go drinking, party, to fit in with everybody and like but he wasn't in the best headspace. So, and then whenever he was trying to feel in that headspace, he really didn't have anyone to go to because, they were distracted by partying and they're like, like let loose. Like, why are you even worried about all these things? And like, there was a
Jeez.
backlash to that too, which really sucked. And later we found out he was also diagnosed with depression. So it was really hard for him too. But obviously he's been better now. But yeah, like that already alone, when you said that about the military, I was like, oh man. I mean, to be honest, I thought the same way too. And whenever I'm guilty of this. Whenever I found out somebody was in the military, I was like, I don't see that with you. And then I realized that wasn't the best thing to say to someone. So, um, but yeah, like it's like when you think about it for a guy who's in the military, you're like, oh, he's probably like super tough and whatnot. But then
Yeah,
whenever
right.
he's
Yep,
sensitive, it's
exactly.
like, no, you can't be in the military. Like that's not right. Because they're just human and that's okay. They can feel a lot of things and like I don't know how it is now. I mean, it's probably completely different. I would hope that they prioritize mental health, but I don't know. You tell me, Thomas. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really heard too much about it. I kind of distanced myself from it, honestly. Like it was a good community and I met a lot of cool people. I still
Yeah.
talk to one guy pretty regularly, but we went through like basic training and job school and we're in the same unit like all together at the same time. So like we kind of
Mm-hmm.
had no choice, but I mean like he's a good guy, but he's still in and he talks about it and it's I don't think really much has changed, and I don't know necessarily if it will. I definitely think the military is going to be the last bastion of like manly men or stuff like, or like the thought of being super in that society of like
Sorry, the way you
not
said that.
sensitive men. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm I'm glad that nowadays we are in a generation where we're gonna grow up as parents, probably our generation specifically, where we are going to implement a lot of like gentle parenting, or at least have some boundaries instead of just bottling up a lot of feelings. We'll just talk it out because that's really the best thing you can do. And I know, like growing up, one of my friends, he grew up with a pretty abusive household where his dad was very strict on him in a lot of ways, where um, it led him to resort to a lot of violence, even, and it was and that led to a lot of anger issues for him personally. So whenever any form of confrontation happened, he would feel like he would need to put a wall up to defend himself, to be high guard, which that already alone breaks my heart because it's like I mean, this poor man just wants to express how he feels, but the only way he knows is through anger and violence. And like, I know that doesn't apply to all men. It probably applies to anybody who's been in a similar situation, but I know that's happened for him personally, and thankfully, now that he's seeking help, he's definitely been one to just resort to peace, just talking things out. And like, I know as a parent for me, I know hopefully me and my partner we will be like, all right, our son or daughter, mostly just son for an example, is feeling this sort of way. Why is he feeling this way? Instead of trying to punish him for how he's feeling. So
Yeah, definitely. What I was gonna add on to that is that you pointed out like the generational like changing, and I definitely
oh
think
yeah,
there, like my dad kind of didn't like he chose to not to take over like not or what am I trying to say, um, like take what happened to him and do it to me. I feel like the generation above
oh
him, like my
yeah,
grandpa's grandpa, like I feel like he was just I feel like my grandpa was just copying, his dad, but it kind
yeah,
of moved down and my dad was like, "Nope, I'm not going to do that with you because I hated that." And I definitely think
mhm,
that is a really good change. And my mom said it all. My mom still says it to this day. She's like, "You wouldn't have survived back then. They used to beat the crap out of us." And I'm like, damn, there's like probably some really deep seated trauma there. And like, I'm
yeah,
sorry, and I don't think they ever had a chance to talk about it, especially in that moment.
mhm.
Because I feel like that's a really important time to talk about it, is almost right after it happens, after you're done processing it. It's like, it kind of
Yeah,
sticks
because
with
you
you.
have to move on from that
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah, and that was actually the same thing applied with my family. So my dad knew that the way corporal punishment wasn't it, and he learned that the hard way. I mean, obviously, where he grew up was a little more abusive, but afterwards he knew that he never wanted to be like my grandfather in a way of how he handled things. So yeah, like he has his own personal things that he needs to still, even to this day, go through and reflect upon himself. But he knew as a dad that wasn't the best way to support your child. And like, I guess we are grateful for that for our both of our dads.
Right.
And I really think it really is a generational thing. I think I don't know whether it's mostly like the millennial generation or maybe it's the Zoomer generation specifically that is definitely going to put more emphasis on mental health itself. I hope so. I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but I know for like us especially, I mean, the best thing we want to do is make sure our kids okay. We don't care whether they're failing in school. We want to know why, like why is he feeling sad? Why is he feeling upset? And then we can worry about all the other stuff. So,
Yeah, I will say it's been a noticeable change. There are still quite a few like I don't want to say traditional families, but the people that I run
yeah,
into that have those traditional families, like, and don't know anything else, like,
that's true.
they still think like that. So, um, I don't really know. I think just learning about it in general has helped me understand it. And I mean, sometimes people just refuse to learn about it, and that's their choice, and we can't really do
Mm-hmm.
anything about it, or force it down their throats. But it's just like they feel like like they have to accept it, and while they necessarily don't have to, I definitely think they're holding us back quite a lot, especially if
Yeah.
someone from the older generation is talking about it and we're just like, that's complete nonsense. but
Yeah.
but we have to do it in like an educational manner where it's just like, no, like let's really sit down and think about it. And a lot of, unfortunately that generation doesn't want to, or just chooses not
Yeah.
to because they're so set in their values already because they've thought it their whole life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And like I also had a friend who grew up in a very traditional household, and I even noticed just by talking to him sometimes whenever I try to ask him if he's feeling like, are you feeling okay? Like they'll avoid the topic completely, and then they'll talk about like video games. Like, okay, I see what I see how you're doing. I see what you're doing. And I even wrote like, I called him out on it because that's just what I do. Like, I noticed that you avoided my question and how you were feeling, but I do want to emphasize that, hey, like I'm here for you whenever you want to open up, and I'm not gonna push you to open up like that, if you don't want to. And like a lot of the times, I've noticed a lot of my friends even just coping with distracting themselves and just bottling up, which, I mean, guilty, I do the same thing, but I know it's even harder for a lot of people who grow up in traditional households because they feel like they can't even go to their own parents for help. So,
Yeah, for sure. I definitely noticed like talking to my dad, that's a little bit harder. I
mm,
still think he like I don't know. After he left home, I think he was like forced to be super independent, and I mean like I kind of had to too, but it was a little
mm,
different for me. I feel like I'd had more space to be like more sensitive while also being independent, but I feel like he was just kind of shoved into independency
oh yeah,
because that was
true.
expected of him. I kind of just went on my own accord. Like I didn't have to, but I did. But he was more forced to. So I think him being forced definitely affected how he thinks about all this stuff. And he definitely, when I talk about it with him, he gets really sensitive about it. But I have to accept that that's just because I think there's some masked trauma behind it, and that's why he gets so upset, is because he dealt with this almost like same exact thing. And sometimes there's good and bad times to talk about it. Like I feel like a good time that we talk about it is like when he asks like, hey, how you doing? And then, like I'm just like, sometimes I'll ask like, do you want me to be honest with you? And sometimes
Yeah.
he's just like, I just want to know that you're okay. And like that means a lot to me, but it also says like maybe like keep some of the negative stuff like away right now because it's not a good time. But that's
Mm-hmm.
just something that I've had to learn to do with him. And I've been trying to be patient because I know that he doesn't understand a whole lot. I know deep down he does, but
Yeah.
I'm an only child and I'm his only son, so I mean like of course you want me to be the best that I can be, and I really appreciate that, and I can feel it coming from him. But talking about mental health has not been an easy thing for me with him, but I've
Yeah.
learned, and I think he's also learned and been patient with me and stuff like that. Because I mean, like I think I've been dealing with some of my stuff since I was a teenager, and I think he knew about it all along, but didn't really know how to help way back when. I think he was dealing with his own things, and sometimes it's when you're dealing with your own things, it's hard to realize what's going on in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's funny when you mentioned about how it was kind of a little bit harder to speak with your dad. I wonder how it is for my brothers to reach out to my dad. I feel like they're pretty short sentence, like "How you doing? Good. Okay, good." Pat on the back, call it a day. Don't know how if it's been the same feelings that you have applies to with my brothers, but I know when I asked my dad specifically about like, hey, is one of my brothers still going to therapy? And he specifically even said like, I don't know, like that's all your mom's thing. And I was like, you could know too. I know you're not one to know about mental health specifically, but hey, it's okay to feel concerned for your son and for me, for everybody. And like I mean that's just how he grew up as to really he knows how to help in form of resources and what to do, but specifically about feelings, it's he doesn't know. And maybe he does, I don't know, but I know I found it very hard for me to open up to even to my parents about it too. And I can imagine for you, especially because it's like I don't know how it is differently from a son to a dad, but I could it could be a little short sighted with it. I don't know, but I find myself the same way sometimes with my dad. Like I'll even talk about it, and then he'll be like, "That sucks," pretty much,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, I get it. You feel me. That's okay, and probably he is that way. It's the same to my brothers, but yeah. For the most part, I think he has gotten better with accepting his feelings a little bit more, especially because with my mom's a very emotional person, because that's where I get it from too. and so they've allowed themselves to feel more vulnerable with each other, which is nice. And with my brothers, I think I'm trying to make them crack a little bit. They do reach out for help for me sometimes whenever I do, so I always try to be a really supportive sister when I can. And then same with all my guy friends, I don't ever want them to feel like they can't be vulnerable around me, so I always find that's important too. So that's why I offer my services. That's why I love counseling. I love helping people. So, but anyways, enough about me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, that's enough out of you. Kidding.
that's enough out of me. Yeah, stop talking about yourself.
Nah.
Gosh, Lily.
It's good to realize, from an outside perspective, how you see things and stuff like that. And I think you definitely take the time to understand that it is just a completely different world that you might not ever fully understand. Like, you'll do your best, but I think you do a really good job, a lot better than a lot of people in my life. So, but I mean, like,
Oh,
I definitely think the being in counseling helps too, and stuff like that. And just uh
yeah.
we're both very like, we take a piece of information and really like analyze it and not just take things for face value. Like, if I were to just be
Yeah,
like,
we're existential idiots. That's why.
uh-huh,
I'm
he
kidding. I'm
said it,
sorry.
she said it.
I said it. I said it.
But like, if someone just comes up to you and say, I'm sad, and then you're not just gonna be like, oh, that sucks, like,
Yeah, that sucks,
sorry,
bro.
bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, bro. You're gonna be like, hey, you want to talk about it? Like, not everybody does that. Like, I've definitely had that, like, where they just will not. It's not that they don't care, but it's just like they don't understand. Like, that maybe like that's a cry for help. Saying like, oh, I'm really feeling sad today. Like,
Yeah. It's like sorry, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I see those memes where when you and your bro are up at 3 a.m. and it's
oh
like them
yeah,
sitting by the campfire. It's when they like really lock in to be like, oh shit, like this is serious. And I know for certain whenever it's someone especially that always puts a smile, is always smiling or also joking around, but when they're actually serious, I'm like, oh shit. Okay, they're really serious. Like, let's give them the chance to talk because if they get rejected right there in that spot, they'll never want to open up. And that's also another thing. Another thing I even noticed with a lot of men do too, because they'll be in a group with a bunch of guys, and like they're messing around and whatnot. And again, I mean, I could be completely wrong, but this is just from my own observation. And they'll talk about some things, but then when they get serious, it's like, oh shit, they're having to sit down. So, and then I've had a friend of mine who did have that experience, and then they were like, "Yeah, oh, bro, like, what are you even talking about? Like, why do you feel that way?" And was completely rejected, and he did not even open up once to them anymore. Which that already alone is just heartbreaking to hear because it's like those are your friends that you felt like you can trust and feel vulnerable around, but then you get shot down, and that's already alone the worst feeling is getting that rejection. So
yeah, for sure. I've definitely had those conversations. It's more one on one. Like, I haven't really experienced like a group setting like that, honestly.
oh yeah,
But like one on
yeah,
one, like, I feel like I've definitely stayed up late with a lot of my friends, and like it gets usually really like, we'll joke around, but then like something will get brought up, and it's just like, oh, what do you really think about that? So sometimes it's nice to just be one on one, but yeah, the group setting, I actually don't even think I've really experienced that. I think
mm,
I mean, I joke around a lot. I mean, I'm never serious. So it's like,
yeah.
I think people get a little confused when I do get serious, or they think I'm still messing around. It's like, what are you talking about? Like,
And that's
what?
why I ask you, how
Yeah, I
you
know.
doing?
I
There's
know.
that checkup in me that is like,
I
hey, you
appreciate you.
good?
Yeah.
Yeah. I with the whole group thing, I mean, usually that is when I feel like most guys are pretty more comfortable if it's one on one because or if it's a couple friends that they may feel that they trust, then sure, but yeah, it's definitely a different vibe to it when it's individually. That's where all I see all those memes from, where it's the two guys sitting in the campfire. And I don't know, at least personally for me, I love those conversations. And not to say that like we need to have them all the time, but it just shows more parts of that person, guy or girl, especially for guys, because it's like, okay, now I understand where you're feeling, where you're coming from, and these are not a lot of feelings that you get to show yourself to other people. So Like like that's why when I first started talking with you, like we hit it off with the whole mental health thing because we were just like, this is how we feel. We're both pretty reasonable people to talk about these type of things with stuff, and for me especially, I know we are both different genders, and I keep in mind how you feel versus how I feel, and then at the end of the day, we don't really like look past that, but I know our own experiences are different, and that's why I was like, in this podcast, Thomas, you're gonna be talking
For
because
sure.
I wanted to hear more about your own experiences too. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say overall the past like 3 years have been like the best for me. Like, and I think that's just because I've become a lot closer with a lot of people, and so like
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I wasn't necessarily like I think we didn't have internet for a while when I lived with my mom, so I couldn't
Yeah.
really talk to anybody else, and like if I didn't have my phone, I couldn't really text people, and like there were times where I just could not text anybody, and I was all alone dealing with my problems. And I'm so thankful now that I have Discord, and like people are just like seconds away. Like I could text if you're up
Yeah.
and like you're on Discord, like I'll text you and you're like responding in like 2 seconds. So like that's
Yeah.
something that I didn't have when I was younger too. And I think that's affected
Mm-hmm.
me. And I think like me opening up now has been eye opening and has made me feel a lot better. I feel like I used to really uh hold things in back then, and like I don't know, I definitely
Yeah.
feel way more safer now, just letting it all out. I kind of like people are always like, "Man, you just say whatever's on your mind," and I'm just like, "Yeah, because I'm comfortable with you, So I
Yeah.
don't. It's not like that. I want you to appreciate it, but it's just like I'm me, and you accept me for me, and like I think this is something that I need from you. I don't like to ask for things, but it's like this is just how I am, and I think I've been accepted a lot, and definitely like back in the day, like I was like a pathological liar almost, because like I wanted people to like care about me instead of just being myself and having people care about me. And that was something
Mm-hmm.
that like now when I try to lie, it is like the most gut wrenching, like heartstring pulling, like I can't do it. I literally will just be like, nope, nope, don't feel good about this.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
there's been a couple of times where I've lied, and then I've just been like, nope, that's not true. Yeah, sorry about that. And it's a hard thing to do because they'll get upset with you. Um, but it's just like every time they're always like, well, I'm glad that you were so open about it and you just told the truth. And like that was
Mm-hmm.
something I think that I had to learn was like, it's okay to just when they said it was okay, I learned that it was okay to just admit the truth, and it made me feel a lot better. Like I don't even think about it anymore. I'm just like, yep, we resolved that. We resolved that really quickly. Because that would have caused a lot of problems. But
Yeah. And something that you mentioned about how like in Discord and stuff, I can talk about this on a separate episode, but telehealth has been amazing, and I can say for even just or even being online, like online has allowed a lot of people to reach out for help anonymously. Oh my god, I can't say that. Or even just in general, when we mentioned about traditional households, I'm glad Discord has become a thing where people can reach out to their friends, meet new people, find their own form of support system. And like I know a friend of mine who also has a group of friends, so he has his own where he can show his true colors versus like another friend group that he knows IRL in another Discord, and he's allowed himself to find parts about himself that he didn't even know, which was already like really great. And like um he at one point he didn't like he kind of like lied about it because he felt embarrassed about the Discord that he was in. When you mentioned lie, that's what brought up the story. But he knew like that's not what he wanted to be for himself, but like the expectations that he was worried that he'll feel embarrassed about expressing who he is and stuff. I think later down the line he just learned to express himself, which is great, but I know before he was very closeted of how he felt. But again, like it's even nicer to just have an online group of friends that you can connect yourself with. Find a group that can help you distract you from other things that are going on with your life, which guilty, I do the same thing. So yeah, but I know this is this episode's mostly about men's mental health and whatnot, but we're just we're just speaking our own experiences, some other stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely easy just to speak on their own experiences, but there are so many other experiences, and I'm sure a lot of people have it a lot better and a lot worse. So it's important. I that's how I like kind of cope with them. Like I know that there's so much more out there, and like I could have grew up a lot different, and so everybody has their own story, and I always try to remember that when I think about mental health. It's like one of my friends, I had no idea. I thought that I was so like oh I'll pick up on that if my friend's depressed or sad, but then he told me he was seeing a therapist, and I was like, huh? I was like, what? I was like, and I that completely changed me from the day on to be more attentive and like just even if you guys are having a good time, I'll be like, hey, are you doing all right? Like and sometimes still I get a lot of deflection a lot, but there are a couple times where I've asked that and they've been like, oh no, man, I've been dealing with this, and it leads to a really good conversation. So I'm sure
yeah,
that they've never really said it, but I know deep down they probably do appreciate me asking,
yeah.
just
I
because I
noticed that.
can feel it.
I was gonna say not a lot of people will verbally say what's going on, but the fact that they would say like, "Yeah, I'm just having a rough time," and then you offer your form of support to them, that goes a long way. And like, I definitely do that a lot with all my friends, not even just guys, but just everybody. And like, it's it even provides an opportunity for them to come back to you to be like, "Hey, it's okay if I vent to you about this, or just kind of get this off my chest," because a lot of times people just don't have that space to do that. So, and I know for my personal experiences, I do that with Thomas. So, and Thomas has always been checking up on me. I know he checks up on his friends, and people feel safe around him whenever they've reached out for help because he's Thomas. Thomas is great.
Yippee!
I can go this whole episode telling how great Thomas is.
Nah, that's you.
But yeah,
I yapped all the time about you. But
yeah.
anyway,
Anyway.
I will like this. I'll talk about one last thing that didn't really get to talk about during the
Oh,
episode
okay.
was existential thoughts. Uh,
Mm.
this is something that I haven't really discovered until like this year. Until we put in like I didn't the thoughts I had didn't really get a name to it until I heard about the word existential. Now I had heard
Mm-hmm.
it before, but I never really like thought about it in the way of mental health. Um, it's a very scary thing because you think about like your future and stuff like that, but there was a deeper side to that I didn't realize I was doing, where it was like, what are we doing here? What am I, like other than just someone who was here because of luck, and stuff like that. And it's a very hard thing to realize, and I almost have to like snap myself out of the reoccurring thought because you keep getting stuck and you keep asking yourself about a purpose, and when
Mm-hmm.
I do talk about it with a couple of people, and I've only done it with like two or three, but I always say, well, the one thing I do like is music and like being here for my friends and family and stuff like too, and that definitely helps me, keeps me grounded, and I try to think of it as a distraction, but it definitely feels like it sometimes. Like if I'm not thinking about it, it's out of sight, out of mind. As sad as
Mm-hmm.
that is to say that I want to process it, but sometimes it's just better to put something in front of me constructive to do, and thankfully I've been doing that. I had my first guitar lesson with my buddy Max last week. We
Hey.
had I wasn't I had such a great time, and I was learning so much, and we were laughing and having a good time and just messing around with the amps, and like it was a really great time, and that was something that I really enjoyed. And I wasn't having any existential thoughts that entire time, so it was just
Mm-hmm.
like I'm really glad that I
Yeah.
did this and made the decision, because like it's
It sounded
it's
like you found your own purpose
yeah,
with it. Yeah.
it's so easy to get stuck in a loop. It's the easiest
Mm-hmm.
thing because there's almost no effort in doing it. You can just think, and you're there. But I definitely have been happy breaking the loop, and not thinking about it. But it still happens, and that's okay. you know, but I'll usually just do one of my favorite things and take time to do that. So,
Yeah. Um, I thankfully I haven't had any existential thoughts recently. I think I've been more focused on just being. I've been so busy. I mean, anyone who knows me IRL who's listening to this has know that I'm going through a lot of a lot of transitions with life in general, and I do find myself questioning my own sorts of purpose, my own like what is my role in life? What is it that I am doing that is part that could be part of society, I guess. But I know when I heard about you playing guitar, I was so happy for you because I knew your existential thoughts have been always been a struggle for you because it's I know we've talked it through and there were a lot of times where it's like it goes through an endless it's like a lot of tangled thoughts that you're trying to untangle, but then there's always just another knot that just ends up being stuck. So it, and not to say that it was bad, it's just, it's one of those hard things that you have to I guess be mindful for and like it's hard to cope with those things sometimes. And for me personally, I know like being in the program and also helping people that I really care about has been one of the biggest things that has allowed me to just keep going. I feel like in a way it doesn't make you feel alone, and also like having a support system also has been really helpful. I've discovered myself a lot through like art and stuff, and like I know for everybody they'll find something that or is doing something that they'll feel like that they can continue to living on this earth for and I'm just happy for you. And I heard about that. I was so proud of you. I was so happy, and I knew that was something that you've been looking forward to, and yeah. So, and I'm here to support you on the sidelines, be a little cheerleader, So,
of course, I'm there for you
yeah.
too, and I really appreciate your support. And I think it's a really beautiful thing when friends can be a part of something like that together. You know, just hearing it makes me happy. So
Yep, yep.
you're never alone in this world. Truly, never alone. You might feel that way, and I've felt that way. Maybe you have too, but
Mm-hmm.
it's important to keep yourself grounded some way or another. Music, sports, education, anything. You know, hanging out with friends. Just as long as it's
And
positive. The unhealthy, I know a lot of people that use unhealthy ways to deal with it, and
yeah,
unfortunately, it's a real thing that happens.
yeah, and you know, with that in mind, it's a hard thing to break, and nothing is wrong with that. With you trying to do the best that you can, you know. We could talk about that in a whole separate, obviously, in episode two. But I know for certain a lot of my friends who I had a lot of guy friends, even surprisingly, because of this topic, or have been going through a lot with not doing the most healthiest ways to cope with their feelings, but still supporting them whatever they can and how their journey to recovering from, like hard substances, alcohol, whatnot, that's already a very challenging thing. And the biggest thing we can do is just be there for them, of course, and provide the help that they need if they want to reach out for help. And I am very grateful that I also have the privilege to have friends who do so. Anyone who's listening, we're your friends too. Like if you ever need help or any form of like that's why we do these talks is that way you don't have to feel alone or just um, allow yourself to relate to our experiences or even just be like, hey, I wish we talked about this, and it's like, yeah, we'll talk about it, and we want to speak on our friends' experiences, the people we know, how everything goes. We definitely use this platform, of course, to voice a lot of things that maybe not a lot of people talk about, or maybe they do, but we get to hear it from us. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to raise awareness. You know, there's a lot of good resources out there already, but there's never enough. When it comes to mental illness, I think there will never be enough. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that we're able to have this platform and talk to you guys and stuff like that. But I will say, I think that will wrap us up for this episode. So, as our existential
Mhm.
talk comes to an end, I would like to remind everyone that there are resources available to everyone from all walks of life and of any age. Please visit some resources such as www.apa.org/topics/crisis hotline and the suicide hotline number 988. Please look in the description for more listed resources. Thank you once again for joining our existential idiocracy, and we hope you stick around for the ride for next week.
Bye, everybody. See you later.